Greetings and welcome to the Seattle Law of One podcast. Today's episode is about the law of responsibility. The law of responsibility can be thought of as a corollary to the law of one. It says the more knowledge we're given about the law of one, the more we'll be held accountable for applying that knowledge in ways that are consistent with the law of one. The law of responsibility also suggests that we will constantly be given opportunities to choose between what we perceive to be the negative path of service to self or the positive path of service to others. And whichever path we have chosen, will be held accountable for making choices appropriate to the amount of knowledge we've been given about that path and about the law of one. What does all this mean and how does it apply to you? Let's find out. My name is Jonathan Tong. I'm facilitator at Seattle Law of One Study Group. We can be found in the list of study groups at the L&L Research website shown on your screen. We do also have a Facebook group, and we do meet on Zoom twice a week, Tuesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific time, Saturdays from 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific time. You don't have to live in Seattle or anywhere near Seattle to join our Facebook group or our Zoom sessions. Anyone who's interested and available is welcome to join. Just contact us at seattlelaw1@gmail.com to get on our mailing list. We send out emails once a week with Zoom links and information on what we're talking about that week. We do also have a YouTube channel where we keep recordings of previous podcast episodes, as well as recordings of our monthly Q&As with Jim McCarty. Just go to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to get notifications when we upload new videos, and contact us at seattlelaw1@gmail.com if you'd like to sit in on any of our Q&A sessions with Jim. Otherwise, as mentioned, today's topic is the law of responsibility. Let's go ahead and meet our panelists. Panelists, let our viewers know who you are and where you're calling from, starting with Sonia.
Hi, I'm Sonia, and I'm calling from Olympia, Washington, and I'm really excited to be joined with you all today.
We're always excited to be able to hang out with you. Thanks for being here, Sonia. And Anthony?
Hi, I'm Anthony, and Anthony Johnson. I'm out here in Camas, Washington.
So great to have you back. Always a joy to hang out with the two of you. Looking forward to a great conversation. Reminder to our viewers that none of us here are experts or authorities on the law of one. We are just normal people like you having a conversation about spiritual things that seem important to us. Anything that any of us say could be wrong. You're welcome to disagree with anything that any of us say. If you are already familiar with the law of one and the entity known as quo, you might want to skip ahead to the chapter on what is the law of one. Otherwise, for those who are new to the law of one, you can think of it as a set of spiritual teachings based on the understanding that all is one and that one thing is love. All of the reading passages we're looking at today came to us through the process known as channeling. You can think of channeling as a form of telepathic communication between humans and entities such as angelic beings, extraterrestrial beings, spirits of deceased, higher self, inner planes entities, etc. A channel basically serves as a mouthpiece for other entities to speak through. And in this case, those entities would appear to be of extraterrestrial origin. There are two types of channeling that have been developed by our friends at L&L Research. Trance channeling is when the channel is in a trance state, subconscious or unconscious, as if asleep, meaning they are not aware of what words are coming out of their mouth as they're saying them. This is how contact was made with the entity known as Ra back in the early 1980s. Conscious channeling is when the channel is in a conscious but deep meditative state, meaning they are only somewhat aware of what words are coming out of their mouth as they're saying them. This is how contact was made with the entity known as Quo, starting in the mid-1980s up to present day. Who is Quo? You can think of Quo as a group entity made up of three social memory complexes: Ra at 6th density, Latui at 5th density, Hatan at 4th density. You can think of a social memory complex as a planetary consciousness. It would be as if the entire human population of Earth was merged into one group mind. You can think of densities or dimensions as different levels of consciousness or different levels of reality, since those two things are so closely intertwined. Imagine, if you will, that the elements of earth, fire, water, and air have some form of consciousness, as many indigenous peoples have been saying they do for centuries. We refer to that as first density. You can think of second density as the level of consciousness of plants and animals, clearly a quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of what we would refer to as inanimate matter. You can think of third density as the level of consciousness of humans and cetaceans such as whales and dolphins. Again, a significant quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of plants and other animals. You can think of fourth density as the level of consciousness of the social memory complex, again, as if the entire human population of Earth was merged into one single group mind. Clearly, a big quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of an individual person. You can think of fifth and sixth densities as whatever would be comparable quantum leaps above and beyond fourth density. There is much more to be said on that subject, and if you're interested, check out our podcast episode on densities and dimensions. Otherwise, for now, suffice it to say, the entity known as Quo appears to be made up of three planetary consciousnesses: Ra at sixth density, Latui at fifth density, and Hatan at fourth density. First contact with Quo was made by the LNL research channeling team in 1986, almost 2 years after the end of the Ra contact in 1984. They have been channeled every month since then, up to the present day, by the LNL research channeling team. Transcripts of those sessions can be found at the LNL Research Conscious Channeling Library shown on your screen. Having said all that, let's take a look at a couple passages on what is the law of responsibility. On November 17th, 2018, Quo said, "The law of responsibility asks that each entity give the fullest respect and effort to each daily experience, to each entity that one meets, and to the entity that you see in the mirror before you each day. You are all the one creator in disguise. Your incarnation has, as its purpose, the removing of the disguise, that you may see the one and all in every instance of your experience." And on April 7th, 1996, Quo said, "Each seeker in the process of seeking will find those resources that are of assistance in the revealing of the heart of love and the nature of truth to the seeker. As the seeker becomes aware of more principles, shall we say, that are applicable to the life pattern, the seeker has the responsibility of utilizing these resources in the service to others and in the enhancing of the life pattern. If the seeker is unable or unwilling to use that which it has learned, then it will find greater difficulty in its future seeking and discovering further principles and resources that will assist in this process. Thus, the law of responsibility simply asks each seeker to use that which is learned to the best of its ability in the life pattern, in revealing love to self, love for self, love to others, and love for others." Two great passages here that I think, as far as I can tell, encapsulate, describe the law of responsibility really well. And from what I'm seeing, it's really just about doing the best you can to treat others as creator, as self, and to see a creator in all others and all yourself. What do you think, Sonia? Any thoughts on anything here?
I really like the opening, that it asks each entity to give the fullest respect and effort to the daily experience. And it's just that as we go through our daily rounds of activities and, all the hats that we have to wear, you work, you are maybe a parent or you're a friend, all these things that we do. And I think it's just that in each of these encounters that we're with other people, it's just really helpful to remember, like, this is me too in disguise. This is like the creator. And I think remembering that really helps kind of flowing through and remembering that everything we do is really all about love.
Yeah. Yeah, always the lesson. Well, and I would think it would be challenging as a parent, and especially a parent of young children, as both of you are, and special needs children in some cases, that, yeah, that's got to be super difficult. And that's why I think I appreciate what they're saying in that first paragraph about do the best you can, give your best effort. They're not expecting anyone to be perfect. They're just expecting, hoping, asking of us to do the best we can. And I find that super encouraging. What do you think, Anthony? Anything to add?
I think it's literally the crutch or the pivot point of kind of the path is once you realize that you are a co-creator in this reality and that your thoughts actually have a direct effect on the experience you have, whether you're looking at it from like a completely mainstream business type of mentality where your law of attraction type of thing? Or are you looking at it from more of a spiritual thing that you are a portion of the creator? When you look out in the world, one of the things in Buddhism is like everyone's a Buddha. You know, there's a Buddha, there's a Buddha, there's a Buddha. And it's the same type of practice here. And the key thing is love. Whether you're focusing on loving yourself, which is really, the wrong channel if you're watching this, or if you like most of us here who are watching, we are about serving others, then the answer is so simplistic that it becomes complicated because every response is a simple answer to love, right? And as someone who's been married for 15 years, I'm learning a lot about that and the dynamics because one thing that I've recently learned in that is the way that we, especially as men, we are expected or we expect to show up in a marriage is not necessarily how our wives want us to necessarily show up in a marriage. And so we have to really do our best to understand and to look at it from a position of love, not from a position of I need this, I want this, she's not doing this, and really look at it from a position of what is it that she really wants, and how can I ask her in a way that's not controlling, that's not demanding, that's not that makes her feel safe and open, right? And then that demands a lot of me, right? I have to really look into myself, and then you apply that to every other aspect of your life, as Sonia was saying, your work, your anything, because all of it is your responsibility now. And
Right.
when you slip on any of it, there's consequences in a sense, or ways to
For
bend you
sure.
back.
Yeah, and I appreciate the way that you kept it centered on love, because I think that's one of the things that I appreciate most about the Law of One, in spite of how esoteric or high spirituality it may seem. It always comes down to love. As they've said, the answer to every question is love. The solution to every problem is love. And we could make it complicated, but it doesn't have to be. If you're just trying to be the most loving person you are and trying to do the most loving thing and say the most loving thing, that's it. Yeah. Beautiful thing. Do you guys have any other thoughts here? I do. I think those were the only two passages I had on this topic, and certainly could have other things to talk about. Anybody have any other thoughts on anything else here?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, I liked what you said, Anthony, about like just all the, even with marriage and all these things that we do. And it's almost like this refining the process, right? It's like every day, every situation, we're just sort of refining our process of like how do we compromise with each other and how do we, work with each other and sometimes the complexity is because we love and because we care and I, like you said earlier, Jonathan, and in the second passage here, it's just we're all doing the best we can. And that's, I think that's really all that we can do.
Yeah.
And if I could just add just briefly a little bit to that, because when I mean complexity, I mean, for example, and you guys have kind of touched on it, but I just want to center in it just a little bit more. For example, I have a 4-year-old. My 4-year-old knocks over something on the table, right? And it's all over the floor. Now, I love my 4-year-old, right? And I'm not thinking of harming, but how do I respond? Do I go, man, what's going on? Don't do that. You do this all the time. Or do I, all right, Ace, these are the little finite things because I would doubt us three have the issue where if our neighbor throws some trash over the yard, we're gonna be like, fuck yeah. And we're not at that level of growth. So like Sonia said, it's a point of refinement and it gets so nitty gritty. The wife says, pick up your socks or something. You're like, well, you just left the room dirty, honey. Give me a second to get in the door. That, how can I respond in a way that's more loving?
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. More and more from a place of compassion, not a place of contempt. More and more from a place of openness, not from a place of acceptance. In a sense, it's a constant refinement.
Do you guys have a trick, for lack of a better word, to remind yourself when you're in a situation with your kids where you could easily lose patience and say something that, let's just say, is less than kind and less than loving? Do you guys have a trick for remembering to do the best you can on that, to see them as creator, to see them as other self?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think, and I have a lot of practice because have a kid on the spectrum, so there's a lot of like remembering that they're viewing things in a different way. And there's beauty in that, right? And there's like a lot of creativity and there's a lot of beauty that I can learn from them and seeing things. So for me, it's if am having any kind of a sudden feeling, and it's a lot of trial and error, I just have to remind myself, I'm probably tired. This is me, right? This is not them. So I just have to take a moment. And sometimes if I can't respond, I'll just wait. And sometimes that's better. Um, but I just try to remember that everything's novel. They're learning. They don't have the wisdom, right? We're all veiled, but they
Right.
don't have the wisdom I've built up at whatever age I am. And so
Right.
I just, as much as I can, it's not perfect. I just try to approach it with curiosity and like learning and
It's a great way to be. Yeah. Especially if that's just an automatic habit for you.
if
Anthony, do you have any tricks, any ways to remember in the heat of whatever moments?
No, not playing. um, First, I would say it's very interesting. Me and Sonia, we seem to have chosen a similar life path because my youngest son is on the spectrum. So I also too have the challenge of those same unique kind of situations. My I really try my best at the end of the day in my evening meditation to review, and that has seemed to help. And I really do my best that in as soon as I notice it, and I'm always reviewing my actions. So as soon as I notice it, I try my best to balance it or address it or apologize as quickly as I can. And then I try not to let any type of feelings of negativity linger into the next day. So I try my best to resolve everything in that day. Yeah.
Nice.
thanks for
I'm not
bringing the point up.
say again.
Thanks for bringing up the apology. I think that's a really great, and this goes for any parent too, of like letting them know, like, hey, I make mistakes too, and it's also like teaching them, like, yes, it's good to take accountability and apologize, and having the
For
awareness to
sure.
do that. And so,
For sure.
good point.
Yeah, my kids are in their mid 20s now, but yes, I do remember more than a few times where I had to apologize to one or both separately or together for things that I said or did that were not particularly that kind or loving. So appreciate and I appreciate the stories. I think really what the law of responsibility is about. It really is not just learning about the law of one, but it's how you apply that to your daily life. That is pretty much what the law of responsibility is about. If it's okay with you, why don't we go ahead and look at a few passages on how does it work? How does the law of responsibility work? On January 24th, 2009, Quo said, as the seeker goes through his life, he is constantly standing at a fork in the road. One decision lasts for a while, but then another decision comes up, another fork in the road. The challenge for the seeker is to determine which choice contains more love, more service, more radiance, and which path contains less service to others, less radiance, and more magnetism, and that which serves the self. When choices are made carelessly, it is often the case that an entity thinks he is choosing positively, but has been seduced by the negative polarity into rationalizing a selfish act by pretty words. So a great deal of care is called for when the seeker perceives that there is this fork in the road. It is well to sit and meditate on this choice, to feel into it. Well, if I did that, what would it feel like? If I did the other thing, how would that feel? For analysis can take the seeker only so far. To achieve a more well-rounded ability to judge at a crossroads in life, it is well to invoke one's own insight and one's feeling of direct apprehension for sensing into the true situation. In order to avoid becoming a pawn in someone else's game, it is well to think for oneself. In order to avoid moving down a sweet-sounding street which ends in a dead end in service to self, it is well to envision and sense into the choice before you. In this way, as you ask for deeper senses to come forward in you, your ability to perceive a situation is enhanced. That is pretty much the reason why I chose the graphic for this episode to be the one that I did with the person at the fork in the road. I think that really does sum up so much of what they're saying, that we're all going to be constantly given opportunities to choose between what we perceive to be the negative path of service to self or the positive path of service to others. And we're probably all going to see it differently. And it's definitely not my place to judge or criticize somebody for seeing it differently than I did, much as I would love to. It's probably depolarizing for me to do that. What do you think, Anthony? Any thoughts on anything in this passage?
So, yeah, actually, if you don't mind, I'll probably open up and get a little bit more intimate with you guys and kind of tell you a little bit of a personal situation that kind of, it's really funny how life presents you with, particularly with these studies, how I've always found as I study this material, it's always the things that are going on in my life that happen to be the material that I'm reading. And so, speaking of this specifically, and speaking of, as we were doing off camera before, kind of our marriages, I've been married for about 15 years, and probably like most you know, corporate guys. I have a corporate job and, got the nice house and all that stuff. I spent most of my time just working, and just paying the bills and thinking that was enough. That, hey, the kids got the soccer, the gymnastics, all the extra stuff, and, I'm good. And what I've learned over time is that it takes a little more than that in a marriage. And maybe Sonia can speak a little more of that from the female perspective. But I've learned that just doing the mundane and just being there and present and being a nice guy can also too be a situation where your wife can become more distant, right? And she can become less affectionate, and not necessarily for any other reason than that. And that's the challenge is wondering why that is. And that's kind of where I was at and still am in a sense, to be completely honest, of how do I best approach the situation? Because there's two paths, and I'll wrap it up on this. There's negative thinking, right? What else is she doing? Who else could she be doing it with? All these things that are quickly answered with these negative thoughts. Someone else, or she hates me, all these things, right? And then there's the positive path, right? What am I, Anthony, not doing in the relationship to maybe make the environment not as open for her? Maybe it may be a situation, maybe she's struggling with this just as much as I am. Maybe there's a situation where, you know, and et cetera, all these positive things. But the interesting about positive path is it takes a longer time for these things to come about, right? To come in anger, we get results real quick. But to take patience and to take the time, in the end result, I know even if it was something negative, I've grown and I'll be a stronger man if it was something negative. And if it's not something negative, approaching it in a positive way gives her an opportunity, I'm hoping, to see and to maybe reopen and become more engaging, right? And so that's a very challenging thing, especially when you're,
Yeah, no doubt about it.
and so
Yeah,
that's an example of kind of the past, because both of them are positive, and both of them in your mind, you're thinking, I want to protect myself, right? So that's a positive thing, right? But then you're also
right,
thinking like, well, how can I build more love with this? Where I can be more patient.
right.
And it's a very challenging thing because at the end, it's no one
Yeah.
getting punched in the face. So
Yeah, and I think it would be fair to assume there are many of our viewers who can relate very much to that in their own way, in their own situation. What do you think, Sonia? Any thoughts on that or anything else from the passage?
Being married and having kids, especially that when there's neurodivergency involved, it's challenging. And
uh,
I think too, like, I like from the other side as the wife who has the husband who's also works a corporate job and works a lot and doing that. And I think it's you're sort of like learning those dynamics of there's so much learn, teach, learn in those dynamics. And I've found, I just so much trial and error to figure out how to approach that. And, this is sort of like finding ways to, it's like that fork of the road. Every time I come up with a problem with him, I see it as this fork of the road of like, all right, I don't want to come out with my feelings right off. I have to just say, hey, this is where I'm at, this is how it makes me feel, but I understand your position and so it's like just sort of a lot of like learning how to communicate in the best way for everybody. And it's not easy because like if we were telepathic, I mean, there would be no issue, right? But it takes
Sure,
so much effort and energy to figure out how to verbalize
for
things.
sure.
And, sometimes men and women think in a different way. And there's that also to work with. So it's
Big
hard,
time.
but yeah.
For
Uh,
sure. Miriam and I have been married for 32 years, and I would gotta strongly agree with both of you that communication is really a huge key to that. Because, yeah, there's many things we do not necessarily see eye to eye on. And when we do feel that we're feeling some tensions and stresses for any number of reasons, we have found that being able to talk about it helps a lot. If you don't mind, I wanted to look at part of the second paragraph, which caught my eye. They were talking about when you're at the fork in the road, and asking yourself, well, if I did it that way, what would it feel like? And if I did the other thing, how would that feel? In terms of choosing between what one perceives as service to self or service to others. I think I wanted to go one step further and ask, well, it's not just what it would feel like to you or how it would feel to you. It's like, how do you think the other person would feel about it if you did that to them? And I think that seems to be something that, in my perception, seems to be missing from our, current events and dealings in the political arena. It just seems to me that people aren't really asking themselves how they would feel to have things done to them that are being done to other people that they don't really seem to care about, one way or the other. And I don't know. It goes back to the golden rule. I have often wondered why the golden rule has very few times been mentioned in channeling sessions, whereas to me it seems kind of like a real central part of the law of one, a corollary of the law of one. What do you think? You guys have any thoughts on that? Go
Yeah.
for it.
Well, I would say something. The golden rule, stated as it is, treat people the way you want to be treated, has a little bit of a clutch there because if you think that the way you want to be treated, I'm a Christian, I want to be treated as Christ, and or I'm a Muslim and I want to be treated as this, and then you go out in the world and treat people like that, you kind of miss the thing. So I always try to say, I want to treat people the way that they want to be treated, which requires me to learn and listen and to understand their perspective and empathize with them. And then if they ask of service, then to be able to be available. But I think that's maybe why our teachers may have not mentioned that. And I've noticed that just in my own studies, that there's a little bit more of an extra step that to be placed there. And then one thing also too, I would say that the most people don't even know deeply how they feel. Honestly, most people don't even look at the antithesis of why they feel that way or even question it at a deeper level. For example, I feel anger at this person. Is that anger something that is truly there, or is it something that is coming from something inside of me? And if it's coming from something inside of me, is it coming from a childhood issue? Is it coming from my dad not listening to me? Is it coming from something deeper than that? And if it's coming from something deeper than that, why? Like these are most people to go, I'm angry and this person's in front of me and that's the source of the anger. So I'm going to come at them. And so before we even try to empathize with another person's emotions, we must first be truly honest with ourselves. And then in that situation, we can easily sense where they're at because I remember when I felt that way. And let me analyze that deeper because we all are one. And so that's what I would say to that is that, and I've noticed
Sure.
this me being kind of a gifted, neurologically different child, I've always been someone that spent a lot of time in this. And kind of my problem is not getting into a spiral of these emotions and feelings
Sure.
and caught up where I'm
Yeah.
crying or I'm angry for hours. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
but
no,
yeah,
that's
it's
totally
something.
understandable. I would think I was thinking more in terms of things that are like acts of violence done to people or violating their basic rights as a person. Let's just say, for example, what ICE agents have been seen done recording doing to, let's just say, black and brown skinned people. It just seems the people who support ICE agents just don't seem to be asking them, well, how they would feel if that was done to
Yes.
them, because I'm pretty sure they really would not want that done to them. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. Didn't want to get into politics, but again,
No,
this is about the golden rule in general. And in this case, it's about the law of responsibility and making choices that are consistent with that path you have chosen, if that path is service to others. Sonia,
100%
did you
agree.
have anything to add on that? Thank you, Anthony. Did you have anything to add on that, Sonia?
Yeah, it was. I was laughing because I had thought of the golden rule, and you're like the golden rule. I'm like totally. That's and it's something it's in my personal life with friends that I seem to be bringing up a lot with. That I've that's weird because we have elementary age kids. This is taught a lot, right? Like, well, how do you think they might feel if you say this? And a lot of that. But there's something with adulthood. It's like people seem to forget it, or I don't know. There's some gap happening. And both of you have mentioned topics and things that relate to this. And I don't know if everyone's just so busy that it's hard to take the time, to
For sure.
have that and finding ways to be efficient and really saying this is a priority and I need to do this. And maybe
For sure.
while I drive, I should take a moment to like contemplate this. And but it
For
takes
sure.
those extra steps to go, well, if I say this, how would that feel? Or, it's just I don't know that it's so much in the culture, you know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your sharing that. And I think it would be fair to say that those who are in charge in positions of power of our political economic system are really doing everything they can to make sure we don't have time to think about that,
Yeah.
don't have time to reflect on that, and are instead kept in a constant state of stress and fear and anxiety and all that stuff. And I'm sorry, I think I was just assuming everybody knew what the golden rule was, and that's probably more like an old person's term. So, yes, it is, as Anthony said, that, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Don't do anything to others that you wouldn't want to have done to yourself. It exists in some form in just about every religion, spiritual path that's been on the planet. And to me, it just seems so basic to the law of one. Yeah, of course, treat others as you would want to be treated yourself because they are yourself. They are literally your other self. So yes, it makes sense in that respect. Oh, yeah, anybody, anything to add before we look at another passage on how the law of responsibility works? Let's
Um,
take a look at this one. This is from September 22nd, 2021. A person named Jim, who I can only assume was Jim McCarty, says in session 101.8, Ra says, we may only suggest that the honor of propinquity to light carries with it the law of responsibility. What does this mean to the seeker of truth? Propinquity means closeness to the light, for those of you who don't have a dictionary handy. Quo responds and says, we are Quo. We are aware of the query, my brother. This query is a vast topic as it touches on a central theme that arises in the journey of the seeker, particularly within the third density as the seeker continues upon its path and develops to a certain point at which it begins to manifest and discover information, inspiration, and most basically light. And in this process of discovery, also discovers that such light carries with it an inseparable burden, if you will. That is what has been called the law of responsibility. In most basic terms, we may speak to this law of responsibility as the notion that as an entity becomes aware of its capacity to create and to accept within the creation around it, that this capacity, if not utilized to a certain purity commensurate with the purity of the light which the seeker has discovered, then catalyst is generated to a higher degree to catch the attention of the seeker and to call the seeker to address where this responsibility is not being accepted and utilized. This effect becomes greater and greater upon the path of the seeker, and the seeker exercises and refines its will and faith. And at a certain point, this will begin to draw to it more and more opportunities for the seeker to act in service, whether in service to others or service to self. These opportunities will present themselves more frequently and with greater breadth as the seeker draws to this light and love. A lot to unpack in this passage, and I think I just want to remind our viewers that we're not looking at the passage in this episode, but at some point, Ross said, there is only one law, and that is the law of one. So the law of responsibility is, like I said, you could think of it as a corollary to the law of one, a subset, if you will. And it hasn't really been mentioned that many times in channeling sessions, and yet it still seems an important principle to understand, which is why we're doing a podcast episode on it. Sonia, any thoughts on anything here?
yeah, the first thing that came to mind is Anthony mentioned this earlier about that we're co-creators. And there's something with this that you're aware of its capacity to create and accept within the creation around it, and to utilize, right, the purity of the light. And it goes back to that fork of the road. It's like you're constantly being given the choice every day to make a choice, and which choice do you want to make? And that's your free will to choose. And the more you know, it's the more you have, I guess, if you want to call it a burden or a responsibility to to choose in that path. And yeah, it's I don't have much more to say.
No, I appreciate it. All makes sense, and I got nothing to add to that. I think the only thing that was catching my eye in particular in that third paragraph was utilized to a certain purity commensurate with the purity of the light which the seeker has discovered. The closer you are to the light, then the more you are exposed to it, to the purity of that light, which means you're going to be held to a higher degree accountable for applying that and living it in a way commensurate to the purity of the light. I just think that's super fascinating, and it's a principle that I certainly haven't seen anywhere other than in the Law of One. So I just find that super fascinating and good to know, I would think, for anyone to understand if they're serious about studying the Law of One and living it. Anthony, any thoughts on that or anything else in this passage?
Oh yeah, yeah. In my studies and this in my practice, I equate this to Tetris, in the sense that as you get better in the game of Tetris, it's not that you beat the game; it's just the blocks come down quicker, and you have to become more proficient at it. And that is very much like this. For example, let's say you read some material in the Law of One, and you go out and apply it, and it actually has benefit in your life. You're like, wow, this is awesome. Well, guess what happens? You're presented with more and more of those similar challenges until it becomes automatic. And it's to me, I have that's the argument that I have with my higher self all the time. It's like I understand that. So do you have to accelerate it? Like why? And I've learned that it's very much like coding, where you will write a line of code and you will test it and you'll stress test it until it's completely working great. And then when it works great, then you do edge cases to it, right? And then after you edge cases to it, every now and then you'll come back and you'll run the same test. And it's very similar to life in the sense that until these things are so automatic, they're like breathing, then at that point you're still tested, but it's not a test. It's just a reaction of love to any response, as Rob would say. And so that really, in my sense, is challenging for us on the path because another way to look at it is it's like a bug lamp. We're in the dark. As we become lighter and more of these insects and mosquitoes start being attracted to us because of the responsibility that we hold in this type of light that we carry, the understanding that we have, and the understanding must be tested and continuously tested. Good times. Great times. I'm loving it. Thank you, higher self. Appreciate it. Looking forward to more and more lessons. And last thing I say is I know personally that it's only me creating this because there's no other person, no other mom out in the world that knows how to point at me and pick at me and at the right moment challenge me in such a way. It can only be me writing the script in some way or at some level.
Yeah. Yeah, it never fails to amaze me how much our third density incarnations really are like being in a video game and how each one of us is in our own video game. And it's designed to give us these catalysts, these opportunities to choose. As Sonia was saying, not just every day, but like every moment of every day in some way, shape, or form, you're given an opportunity to choose between what we perceive to be the negative path or the positive path. And yeah, the more you choose appropriately, then the higher the game goes, the farther you get, and the more the challenges come, kind of like in Tetris. It's like, I wish it was more like Frogger, maybe, but just kind of
Not
got.
not
I'm
in
not
Nate
really
third,
into Frogger either. No, I didn't mention it. Yeah.
not in Nate third density. It's gonna be the most complex game, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, well, thank both of you for taking that challenge and that leap of faith and not just incarnating, but incarnating as parents with children with special needs. I mean, those are real indigo children that you are bringing into this planet, and that's a huge sacrifice. That's a huge act of service. So I hope you'll go easy on yourself, and viewers, I hope you'll go easy on yourself anytime you are less than perfect in the way that you parent or whatever. You guys have anything else to add? I have one other slide, sets of passages to look at on this subject.
Oh, this conversation's awesome.
Yeah, I always enjoy hanging out with you guys. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
being here. Well, first of these was from July 18th, 1982, and our good friend Latouille said, "You have within this group a family of light beings, and each therefore has the opportunity to accelerate its polarity and its evolution by means of the utilization of the information generated in these meditations and in the meditations which have resulted in the raw contact. Therefore, the law of responsibility holds sway, so that where the opportunity to accelerate evolution upon the positive path comes into being, there must also be the balancing opportunity for the entity to choose the opposite path." Interesting that this happened during the raw contact. Speaking of which, session 10, question 12, of the raw contact. Ra said, the law of one has one of its primal distortions, the free will distortion. Thus, each entity is free to accept, reject, or ignore the mind body spirit complexes about it and ignore the creation itself. There are many among your social memory complex distortion who, at this time space, engage daily, as you would put it, in the working upon the law of one and one of its primal distortions, that is, the ways of love. However, if this same entity, being biased from the depths of its mind body spirit complex towards love light, were then to accept the responsibility for each moment of the time space accumulation of present moments available to it, such an entity could empower its progress. Beautiful passages. Always love Latwii. I don't have a favorite social memory complex, but if I did, it just might be Latwii. Mainly because of their funny cosmic sense of humor. I'm reminded again from these two passages that life really does seem to be like a video game where you're constantly given these opportunities to choose between the negative and the positive path. And yeah, what they were saying about the present moment is worth noting because the concept of the present moment, of living in the now, has been talked about so many times in Law of One channeling sessions and seems so important in this context, recognizing that you have an infinite number of present moments every day to make choices to help you improve your polarization if that's what you're trying to do. I just find that super cool. What do you think? Anthony, any thoughts on either of these passages?
First, say Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, great book on the present moment. Um, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about my own personal experience, seeing, understanding that I am a co-creator, understanding that these situations and these nuances of things, because for me, I don't have necessarily uh, the issue where I'm cussing at the neighbor, I'm flipping off someone in traffic. I'm somewhat okay with that. Not that I'm perfect, but that doesn't bother me as much as trying to find out how to be a better dad, or trying to figure out how in the moment can I be more compassionate. And real quick, I'll touch on the dad thing because it's very challenging when you try to apply these things as a father, and because you want to have guardrails on your children, but you also want to have them to be able to have the freedom to explore and to learn and to grow. And they're also entities they're eligible for graduation. And so their souls are just as wise as ours. And I always tell my kids this: you guys are very wise, but you lack experience. You lack the understanding of how to apply all this wisdom. And so how do I speak to them in each moment? How can I guide them in life without controlling the outcome? And because they're our children, as we all know, we want the best for them. However, the best for them may be a very challenging time, right? Or it may be, as my son, who is somewhat on the spectrum there, he has this big black ball that he likes to bounce on. He'll bounce on it on the table. And at first, I'm thinking this kid is going to slip and bang his lip because I would, right? And I would not let him do it, but he insisted on it, and so I allowed him to do it. And this kid has never hurt himself, never even bumped. And when he does hurt himself, he's like freaking Spider-Man, just jumps back up like it's no problem. And so it's like understanding and having faith too is another aspect of that. Like I just have faith, and kind of how I did is like I just said, his higher self, it's on you. Like if he falls and bumps his head, I'm coming to you about it because I can't anymore because he's just going to do it, right? And so it's just having that faith and continuously refining that. And then once you get to that point, how can I refine it more? How can I refine it more?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I would not be the least bit surprised if the children who chose to incarnate with you and the ones that you chose to incarnate with are not only eligible to graduate, but they already graduated. They may well have graduated already and came back, as Ron Kuei have said. Many wanderers here are indeed new to fourth density, but chose to come back here specifically to help out with graduation. So it may be a matter of helping them remember what they have forgotten, since the veil of forgetting is kind of new to them. So they have a lot to remember. But
They're
yeah,
my best teachers. Them and my wife are my best teachers if you look at it from that opportunity.
for sure. Sonia, anything to add?
Yeah, I think about this a lot too, because my kids are my teachers too, and I always think of like, you know, it's challenging to be in this intensive atmosphere that is late third density, right? And and it's for me, I find that there's a lot of like, you know, we're all finding ways of like how do we share our being to others in a meaningful way. And they're sharing their, especially when you have kids on the spectrum that might seem different and other kids are like, whoa, that's different. But you're in the background saying like they're sharing their being in a way they want to show, share their light. And that's the connection that you have with others is how things change, right? Throughout societies. And it's hard to balance the two of like, hey, we're still Earth people and we still have to like do Earth stuff, but we're also like, how do we also, flourish these things within ourselves? And we are going to be different. We're going to be seen different too, but that's okay. And so, yeah, I try to take comfort in the present moment. I'm a Ram Dass fan, be here now, and I just try to see in the moment of like, y- you know the moment is where I'm going to be, if I can stay present, that's when I'm going to be able to see where I can find the love in this moment. And it's, not just for her and, my kids, it's for everyone around us. And it's just that, what can we do too to share ourselves to others and open up and they can share back. And I think that's just how we can share our light with others. And um, it's not easy, but we're all working on it.
Yeah. 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 So much of it does seem to be about looking for the love in the moment and those many times when it's not real obvious where the love is in that moment. That is apparently why we signed on for here. I was really looking at that last part in the first paragraph where they said, where the opportunity to accelerate evolution upon the positive path comes into being, there must also be the balancing opportunity for the entity to choose the opposite path. I think that's an interesting thing that apparently is part of the wiring that you're always given a balancing opportunity to choose either path. That to me strikes me as super interesting and could manifest in so many different ways. But I think maybe they're talking about in the next thing where they're talking about each entity is free to accept, reject, or ignore the people around them or ignore the creation itself or not. I think I can think of many times when we have those opportunities to think of others or just think of ourselves. And it's really easy, I think, to look at the world around you and say, man, fuck this. Everybody's out for themselves. I am just going to think about myself and taking care of my family. And I think that is part of the challenge for us on the positive path to always be thinking of others at least as often as we think of ourselves. That's kind of the challenge, I think.
Thanks for bringing that
Anybody
up.
have any other thoughts, Sonia?
Yeah, what you just said, I think is such an important point right now too. Because it seems like everything around you is really just, you have to protect yourself and your family and all these things. But, and I think that's what makes it so complex, right? Because we do have the free will to choose either fork of the road, either path all the time. And I think that's where the responsibility feels challenging is because it's like complicated to constantly choose like what's the more radiant thing here? Which path here is more radiant
Yeah,
and sometimes it seems like it's not a good thing for you and you're putting yourself out on the limb a lot, but that's part of it. I think that's just having faith and will that
yeah,
we just do keep doing it. It's
yeah.
going to be okay.
Yeah, and again, it's for each person to figure out for themselves what I perceive as negative or positive, what seems ridiculously obvious to me, what is negative and what's positive. Not necessarily the case for others, and they're not necessarily wrong, and I'm not necessarily right. I could be wrong about anything. So yeah, it's a humbling game to play for sure.
Yeah,
And
I
Oh,
find
I just want to say, oh, go ahead, Sonia.
Sorry, I just want to quickly say I find myself constantly trying to build on my grace and being graceful and, but anyway, that's all. What's up, Anthony?
No, I was going to say this is interesting. Real quick, I was on the call with my buddy. He's in his 40s like me, grew up in kind of the 80s, and my son was acting out, right? And my buddy, good guy, good heart. He has a stepson, but has a good heart. And he's like, man, when we were kids, our parents used to beat our behinds about that, and that made us better as characters, right? And so I had explained to him, I don't spank my kids. I actually look at it as an opportunity to be more patient. Now, society would say if your kid is acting up, if he's yelling, if he's like the kid in Walmart that's screaming out and doing all that stuff, it is in your right to maybe use more force, right? But there's also another opportunity to be more patient. And both can be presented to you as a positive thing, but I would challenge one to really look at them and really determine for themselves which is the more opportunity. Because yes, one does solve a problem quickly, but whose problem is it solving? Is it the parent's impatience and inability to deal with his child or her child in that situation? Or is it really the best for the child? Or is maybe being more patient and being more open and being less worried about what society would do and more worried about how your kid feels? Is that the better choice? Now, everyone has to decide. I'm pretty sure people listening to this will have different debates on that. But that is an example of something in my life that is presented to me as, this is also the good way. In society, we have to have discipline, we have to have structure, we have to have this. And then we also have the more spiritual side, which is these are wise, intelligent, either graduated or gifted, or potentially have the ability to be graduated entities, and they have an opportunity to learn, and you're co-creating a situation, right? So these two competing, seemingly positive things that only through meditation and real introspectiveness can one come up with the response that is uh, right for them, right? And I would challenge everyone to look at
Yeah.
each moment a little bit more deeper.
Yeah,
It's
and I think what you're saying reminds me that our graphic here might be misleading because it really suggests you only have two choices, this or that. When in reality, in any given situation, we got a million different choices. We got a million different ways to look at any situation. We got a million different ways to respond. Some perhaps more on the positive side, some perhaps more on the negative side. But yeah. Yeah, it's good to keep an open mind and to be maybe creative enough to be able to think outside the box, shall we say, and be able to think of a creative solution that is more positive than whatever we thought the options were. Shall we go ahead, take a look at another subject?
yeah.
Loving the conversation. How about if we talk a little bit about consequences for breaking the law? In session 22, question 5 of the raw contact, the questioner said, can I assume then that this drastic drop from 700-year lifespan to one less than 100 years in length during the second 25,000-year period was because of an intensification of a condition of lack of service to others? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is in part correct. By the end of the second cycle, the law of responsibility had begun to be effectuated by the increasing ability of entities to grasp those lessons which there are to be learned in this density. Thus, entities had discovered many ways to indicate a bellicose nature, not only as tribes or what you call nations, but in personal relationships, each with the other. The concept of barter having given way in many cases to the concept of money. Also, the concept of ownership having won ascendancy over the concept of non ownership on an individual or group basis. Each entity then was offered many more subtle ways of demonstrating either service toward others or service to self with the distortion of the manipulation of others. As each lesson was understood, those lessons of sharing, of giving, of receiving, and free gratitude, each lesson could be rejected in practice. Without demonstrating the fruits of such learned teaching, the lifespan became greatly reduced, for the ways of honor duty were not being accepted.
Bless you.
Super fascinating subject that our lifespans used to be quite a bit longer than they are now, like 700 years long compared to where we're at now. That's super fascinating that the law of responsibility apparently does not just work for individuals, but it can work on collectives as well. And that our collective lifespan was shortened because of all those things they're talking about in Ra's first part of the response. What do you think, Sonia? Any thoughts on anything here?
Yeah, I find it interesting. It's almost like if we're going to be bellicose, we're not responsible enough to have a 700-year lifespan. So
Yeah.
I can see the adjustment could maybe be a better opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't include it here, but there was some other passage, maybe in this session, where they talked about how with a longer lifespan, you had more time to choose your path and polarize a lot further, whereas most people probably spend the vast majority of their lifespan without even realizing about the law of one, without even realizing there's a choice to be made, without really having that much time to work on polarizing. It's like, wow, that is a huge difference. What do you think, Anthony? Any thoughts on anything here?
Yeah, interesting correlation. If you guys have ever studied the Bible, they talk about, people living all these many, many years and stuff of that nature. One thing I would say though, is that I wouldn't say necessarily bellicosity is the reason for it, but more so a this sinkhole of indifference. See, if we were a completely negative planet, we would be using the light in a negative way and we would have a longer lifespan. It's really the sense that, the creation or the Gaia in a sense, since she's our sub logos, right, has created an environment for us for 700 years, and in 700 years none of us graduated after the first one. So it's like, okay, well, let's just cut the time down and give them a little bit more pressure, right? And then we didn't graduate the second time around. I was like, dang, these guys are really hard-headed. You only get 30 to 100 years each experience. So you go through this really intense experience and you die and then you review, right? Whereas before, it's this long experience that we weren't taking advantage of. We die, review. Long experience, die, review. So they're like, you know what? We're just going to cut this down because you guys are not really taking advantage of this. And we're going to make these more intense and more shorter because we only got 2,000 years or 3,000 years left in the cycle. So it's just, it sounds like it's a natural process and not like it's something that is this, it's part of the physics of the reality that we're in. But that's kind of how I equate it to is the fact that we were spoiled in the beginning and we used up all of mommy and daddy's money, and now they're giving us a little more tighter budget, and we messed up that, and now we got even more tighter budget, and now we have to be really responsible with this small amount of money that we're getting because we blew through it at the Louis Vuitton store and buying cars and all that stuff and crashed them and burned them and messed it up, and now we have to make things do with Walmart and stuff, and we're more appreciative of it now too as well.
Like more
Well,
repetition, you
Yeah.
know.
yeah. Anything to add to that, Sonia?
Nope.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that the shorter lifespan is compensated by the sheer intensity of catalyst that we are experiencing now in relatively short periods of time. We definitely have many opportunities to accelerate our spiritual evolution more than before. I do want to note what they said about, not just the bellicose nature, but also the money. It's interesting that the whole concept of money and what it's done to us, it's like grip on our lives in terms of having to work to get money to pay the bills. And it seems that this whole concept has corrupted us so much that they said, yeah, this just isn't working out. The short lifespan seems to be shortened. And I'm not sure if I understood what you said, Anthony, before, but to me, this seems to be like just a natural cause and effect thing. This was just kind of part of natural laws of the universe of karma, for example, that's just the consequence you have, that this is what came about. Was that what you were saying before, Anthony, about why the lifespan was shortened, or were you coming
Yes,
from
yes.
a different angle? Oh,
Looking at it from an algorithmic, perspective, it's part of the algorithm. It's part of the balancing of the equation. And so these things have to take place in order for both paths to be able to graduate, for the creator to be able to experience all possibilities, and to be able to assimilate them. This is part of that process that takes place. One thing I would add about money, the interesting about money, and I go back to about the confusion aspect of it, is money is very confusing. Some of us think of it as this ultimate thing that we must gather in order to be happy. So we put all this positivity thing. If I only had enough money, and I learned the hard way, having success in my life, that and paying all bills and all that stuff, and realizing the next morning that I'm still as sad and empty as I was before. Because what we're really truly seeking, in my opinion, is the creator. When we're seeking all this money, when we're seeking, intoxicants, when we're seeking even even the reciprocation of love from spouses and from our loved ones. We were truly seeking the creator. And what happens is money can distort that greatly, and it can allow those who prey upon distortion and prey upon people's confusion to have more control and sway over them. So you think by obtaining more money, for example, in my corporate life, I had a guy that I used to push back all the time that would fire people quickly. I was in sales and I managed a whole team of people. And he always wanted me to fire guys if they just end up missing a number once. These guys got family, kids, all kinds of stuff, right? And I would never do it. And so it's just a difference between, and his whole thing was, it's about the company, it's about the money, it's about these numbers. And him, thought he was doing the righteous thing. And in my opinion, I'm like, bro, you have no heart, man. This guy's got a kid. He's trying to buy something new for his, like, he's like, you didn't get it. And so that's just how I look at money. It can be very confusing. It can be used for, I know like this, it's like water. When the snake drinks water, he makes poison. When the cow drinks water, he makes milk. It's not necessarily that the water is bad, but it is what the animal or what the entity does with these resources. Does it make milk or does it make poison with it, right?
That's a really interesting analogy. I've never heard anybody say that before. Did you think of that yourself, or did you
Yeah,
see that
I,
somewhere else?
yeah, I coin that, but this, yeah, I can't.
That's a great
Hopefully,
analogy.
hopefully I didn't take it from someone, but yeah, I think I've said it before on other podcasts, but yeah.
Hmm, nice. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think like anything, well, it has been said that money is the root of all evil, and if you look at the way things are happening now, with it would appear billionaires and the wealthiest elites just getting richer and richer at the expense of everybody else. I mean, it's very consistent with a service to self path. So, I mean, it makes sense, but from a service to others path, that's a whole different story. Again, I really appreciate how they're saying here that each entity is offered many more subtle ways of demonstrating either service to others or service to self. And it just reminds me again and again of how much this is kind of like a video game, isn't it? It's like this isn't random, it's actually designed to be this way. Which reminds me, we had a podcast episode not too long ago on Game of Life. So check it out if you're interested. It was fun. Anthony, were you on the panel for that one? I
I
think
might
you
have
might
been.
have
I
been.
tell you, it's like Tetris. I tell you, this life is like Tetris. The more and more you walk this path, it doesn't get easier. You just have to get better. You just got to get better.
Totally. We did also have a podcast episode on karma where we talked a lot about just basic principle of cause and effect and how that relates to the law of responsibility, and seems to be one of many things about Buddhism, as Anthony has mentioned, that are also central to the law of one. Let's take a look at another passage. This is from session 60, question 16 of the Raw Contact. And here Ra said, at this space-time, we may best serve you, we believe, by stating that the pyramid for meditation, along with other rounded and arched or pointed circular shapes, is of help to you. However, it is our observation that due to the complexity of influences upon the unmanifested being at this space-time nexus among your planetary peoples, it is best that the progress of the mind-body-spirit complex take place without, as you call them, training aids, because when using a training aid, an entity then takes upon itself the law of responsibility for the quickened or increased rate of learned teaching. If this greater understanding, if we may use this misnomer, is not put into practice in the moment by moment experience of the entity, then the usefulness of the training becomes negative. Super interesting. I always appreciate when they say understanding, if we may use this misnomer, or for lack of a better word, because yeah, there's nothing we can really understand in this experience. Really like that. Anthony, any thoughts on anything in this passage?
Yeah, yeah. I actually speak in a personal way as someone who studied law of one for 10 years. After like the first year or two, I decided that I was going to actually do the actual practices to the best of my ability, whether it be the balancing exercises, whether it be uh, having a pyramid underneath your meditation cushion, and also meditation on a daily basis. Even now, I still meditate twice a day, up to an hour each in the morning and the evening. And as you apply these things and you attempt to use the training wheels in a sense, it absolutely will intensify the experience for you. You become more sensitive and more judgmental, more aware. I literally was a director of business development, and I literally stepped into IT and been in IT for the past 5 years, right? Because I didn't want to deal with what I just described in my last statement. And so these things become ever more and more involved in your life, and it becomes something that, if not, I would say, if something that you're not practicing meditation with, to allow these things to really settle into your mind and to really be able to give yourself the ability to absorb these things, you will find yourself, I don't want to say in a place where mental health can be something that you would run into, but it damn near feels like that, because the stresses and the consistency of the catalyst, and you know it's catalyst, and you know you're responsible for it, and so it becomes a very challenging thing without having balance, and also having good friends like like we have each other on these calls, and like you, Jonathan, having the all the different meetings that we have that are not podcasts, that allow us to speak and have these conversations in more of an open group. These things are highly important for us who study these things, because as we become brighter in light, our ops, as the kids say, right? Our people on the opposite side, our brothers and sisters who walk another path, they're going to constantly provide us with equal opportunities, such as, I got to get more money. I gotta look out for self. I got to, she don't understand me. She don't respect me. All of these things, and we don't realize all this me and all this self involved in things, but we
Yeah.
feel like it's right, right? And if we
Yeah,
don't,
as they said a couple passages back, it's really easy to stray from the path or get depolarized by something that seems sweet and attractive, even seems of service to self or service to others, but isn't. Yeah.
and society teaches us to be service to self. Because to be compassionate, to be loving, and to be, this is how they think of it. They don't look at it as a strength to be strong and to be loving and to be compassionate. And I tell my kids this, last thing I'll say, I tell my kids this, that to be nice and compassionate is the harder thing to do.
For
Therefore, you
sure.
should do it, because we're not weak people. To be angry, it's easy. I can easily respond in anger. That is so easy. I can easily come and break a whole bunch of Legos. But how much time and effort does it take to be compassionate? How much time and effort does it take to build? Like, don't show me that you can break something. Show me you can create something. That's
Yeah.
power.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny to remember that it's wired into the archetypical mind. It is wired into the archetypical mind that the entity is always going to be looking to the left in so many of those images, because the reality is designed to appear negative just to make it more challenging to choose the positive path when, like you said, world seems to be designed for you to be to negative. So yeah, it's a great video game. No doubt about it.
Great time. Good times. Good times. Good times.
That's a great challenge for sure. Let's go ahead and take a look at a passage on magic and adepthood. On September 22nd, 2021, Quo said, "This is an important cornerstone for those who wish to approach what has been called adepthood. And while this law of responsibility is always a factor in the life of a seeker, or even entity in its most early stages of seeking, once an entity becomes aware of its own ability to manifest light and create, the law of responsibility, you may say, takes full effect. The entity at this point may realize that there is nothing within its life that it cannot offer love to or be of service towards. This suggests that seekers who are actively practicing to refine their will, to balance their energy centers, and to manifest love and service, that dedication to this path must also become purer and purer, and such a seeker will necessarily need to maintain a great awareness of potential imbalances within the self, distortions, and particularly those distortions taken upon the seeker from its upbringing within the society about it. The awareness of the distortions developed by an upbringing within a distorted society become ever more important, for an individual may balance the self and clear the self of distortions to a certain degree, and an entity may seem to be balanced and move with ease about the society, offering service where it is requested. Yet there is an ever difficult process of examining those things that are nearly universally agreed upon within a society and determining whether or not these aspects of society that have seeped into the heart of the self are in alignment with the chosen path of service to others or even service to self. For viewers who are relatively new to the lot of one, adepthood or being an adept, you could say, just means like being an advanced student of the law of one. To a large extent, it means having activated and balanced your lower energy centers, and you're now starting to work on the upper energy centers, where things are more advanced, more interesting, and doing work that is considered magical. And they're saying once you get to that level, with great power comes great responsibility, shall we say, and the dedication to being pure. And that part of the bottom really catches my attention because they're saying, look at what's going on in the society around you, and you may well find that what you're being called to do goes against what society seems to be doing. And as they said in another passage, freeing oneself, an adept has to free oneself from the thoughts and opinions of others, whether on the service to others or service to self path. What do you think, Sonia? Any thoughts on anything here?
This is a challenge for me as of now with raising children too, with this distorted society, right? And having to teach them. There's like just so much conversations and having to like how can we be in it? How can we work within it, but how do we not be it, right? Like yeah, it's just I feel like it's a constant work as of now for us in our family. Um but it's for me it's sometimes it's the simplicity of saying I need to find love in the moment. I need to be the love right now, or I need to find the light. And it's just sometimes it's the simplest answer in the complexity, right, of maneuvering through all of these things. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, and like everything else, there's so many different ways to look at it. So I think again, it's for each person, I think, to figure out for themselves how they're going to respond to what they perceive as the pressures from society to be more service to self in whatever sense one takes that. I don't know. What do you think, Anthony? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of was thinking in the sense of my Zen practice as something that I do. I kind of practice Zen, have equal amount of time with the law of one. And one thing that we learn in Zen is about the losing of the self, right? The idea that we have to protect this concept of Anthony or this concept of Jonathan or Sonia, right? And we really try our best in meditation and through our practice to kind of look at what that is. Where does Anthony exist? Is it in my toes, my head, my ears? And as you probe these things more and more and more, you, at least in my experience, you find that that can be a huge stumbling block for us because going back to our own intimate and personal relationships, the answer is always love. But the hesitation in that is this fear that this person is going to hurt us or harm them, or even harm themselves in a sense, it's going to harm us. So seeing our kids hurt, you know, also too, there's a sense of I'm a failing as a parent. I have failed, right? I I don't feel this way. And so there's a very, as it says, a nuance, I believe they were mentioning, that a very subtlety to the path as you try to walk this path of adepthood. Because to be an adept is to go beyond graduation, to begin to beyond what it is to open the heart and just love everyone kindly, but to then study that and then to look deeper into that and try to, as you're in third density, as you said, Jonathan, very well, to with intention and with regularity, open up the higher energy centers so that when you have these opportunities and magical opportunities are presented to you, it's commonplace. It's not something that's this huge acid experience. It's commonplace. Very similar to Ram Dass and him giving the guru the acid, and the guru was like, this is all, like, because his mind state was already so wide open and so accepting of it that the the randomness of that chemical opening up the gateway was something he had already stabilized. And so these are things that are beyond what the average person or anyone listen to, even us, will have to go to. But if we do choose to step on the path, there's great rewards that come through much challenge and difficulty.
Yeah, and with those great rewards come greater responsibilities and higher expectations, I think. I think this passage is reminding me of the other passage we were looking at where they were talking about pyramids, using pyramids to meditate with. And if you use a training aid, as they say, to accelerate your spiritual growth, then again, with great responsibilities, with great power comes great responsibilities, and you'll have to be more careful about being held to that higher standard. I think as an adept as well, that works the same way. Could be like working with crystals, same kind of thing, working with plant medicines, working with anything outside of yourself to accelerate your spiritual evolution. Then, as they've said, the law of responsibility kicks in. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing. I feel like I've used a number of training aids, and I think I have been mindful about being aware of the positive or negative impact that might have. So again, it's for each person to figure out for themselves. Anybody else have any thoughts on this passage before we take a look at something else? Let's let's go ahead and take a look at a passage on honor, duty, and responsibility. In session 22, question 26 of the Rock Contact, the questioner says, I see then what you're saying is these naive Confederation entities had had the same thing happen to them in the past, so they were doing the same thing for the Atlantean entities. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. We remind you that we are one of the naive members of that confederation and are still attempting to recoup the damage for which we feel responsibility. It is our duty, as well as honor, to continue with your peoples, therefore, until all traces of the distortions of our teach learnings have been embraced by their opposite distortions and balance achieved. And on February 2nd, 2022, Quo said, we reiterate as a final thought shared through this instrument that as increased light comes with responsibility. One might view this responsibility as a burden, but we encourage you instead to view it as an honor duty or a duty honor, for we find within the hearts of those present the desire to meet that potential and to serve within deeper waters of inspiration and magical potential. Though the necessary dedication to the responsibility implied by this further seeking is increased, the potential to meet and even surpass such responsibility is alive in the hearts of each present within this circle. I find this super encouraging because I think it's easy for one to look at all those passages and things we've said about the law of responsibility and see that as a burden, something like, well, fuck that. I guess I'm not going to do anything to try to improve my spiritual evolution. I think, yeah, rather than seeing it as a burden, something bad that's going to happen as you learn more about the law of one, just see it as a honor and a duty and a joy, something to take joy in. That's what I'm trying to do, at least. I don't know. What do you think, Anthony? Any thoughts on anything here?
Yeah, I'm doing that too with various levels of success there, my friend. Um, one thing I just want to point out the humor I find in this, Don, the questioner, is like, you talk about the guys that just naive Federation entities, that kind of slipped up and messed up, those guys. And Raw's like, yeah, those guys. And let me tell you something, brother. You talking to those guys, you just, little respect there, guy. We are those guys who made that mistake, right? And
Yeah.
so I like how they respectfully kind of point out, yeah, and they owned it too. Like, hey, we the ones that fucked up, and mind you, you're talking to those guys, so you don't have to talk about it like in third person in a sense.
For
Um,
our viewers who are not up on the
oh,
context of that, do you want to share a little bit what they're referring to?
absolutely. So Don is the questioner in the raw. We have a questioner, we have a scribe, and we have the channeler. And Don
Oh,
was
I
talking.
mean, just what he was
Yeah,
asking about
yeah.
in
Oh,
terms of
specifically
the
with that. Yeah,
naivete.
yeah, yeah. That the fact that the raw social memory complex gave to the Atlanteans crystal technology and pyramids, and the Atlantean technologies, Atlanteans were just like us in this time. So what would we do with this type of technology, right? We probably have it in corner stores and WalMarts. We would be having vacation trips. We'd
We'd
be
make
coming have
weapons
a
out of it, I believe, is what
and
we would.
weapons of course, I mean that's the first thing we did. We would build nuclear bombs, all kinds of stuff, and so they were responsible for giving them that technology, and they were naive because they thought we would be like them, and unfortunately we are third density repeaters, as one of our students I think Scott Mandecker had says, 3D repeaters, man. So like, what can we say?
Yeah. Yeah, the history of humanity and the Confederation is basically example after example of them giving us things intending to help us with our spiritual growth and us finding some way to turn it into a fucking weapon or something. It's just really, yeah, karmic cycles from, as you say, repeaters from other planets that literally destroyed themselves or rendered themselves uninhabitable because of endless karmic cycles of war and bellicosity. Yeah, it is funny. If you can laugh at it, that probably is a super helpful thing. Do you have anything to add, Sonia? Any thoughts on anything here?
I thought that was funny too. They're like, we are one of the naive members. And I think too, I feel like it's interesting to point out too that this is a sixth density social memory complex, and they're like, what the hell? I imagine they're like, whoa. I mean, just to say like the intensity and the confusion and all that's happening on Earth, and just to give yourself time to breathe and just accept, this is what it is. We're part of it, but we're really here to like help. And I think in the second one with Kuo, and I like that it's 222, the date, which to me is like it's not a burden, right? It's we're tired, right? We're like constantly doing the work and effort, but to just the perspective matters, right? If we can just it's our own duty too within ourselves to tell ourselves like to change our own perspective. And there are times where I'm tired. I'm like, it's okay. I know I'm tired, but it is an honor. It's a duty, and it's not a burden. And to just constantly do that self-talk and kind of like rebalancing. But yeah, it just goes to show that it's intensive here. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks first of all for reminding us of the repeating numbers. That should repeating numbers. I'm a numbers guy myself, and I definitely appreciated that. But yeah, yeah, I think as both of you were saying that I think I hadn't necessarily picked up on that much. It's like, well, if they, a sixth density social memory complex, literally hundreds of millions of years ahead of us in spiritual evolution, they make mistakes and they're taking responsibility for it, doing it, then yeah, I suppose we could learn from that and maybe try to be more like them in that respect. Not a bad idea.
we're,
Any,
we're
yeah, go ahead, Sonia. Anybody else have anything to share on this passage?
It's opportunities to grow in wisdom. This is like even Ra's working on the wisdom and on this. And it's just like we're supposed to trip and fall and then get up and learn from it. So don't feel bad that you're tripping and falling. Just know that it's for your learning opportunities.
For sure. Yeah, learning and to see them and to learn love the learning opportunities as an opportunity to learn. That's a advanced level of what we call seniority of vibration,
Mhm.
reaching those higher levels of vibration
And
that I
like
think we're all shooting for.
definitely. And I like that you brought up too that it's like a game. It is, right? And try to find love for the game. So, and the game's hard. And it's like if it wasn't hard, we would probably be bored and not, it's the challenges that are like what makes it so challenging is I imagine if we were to just our higher self can just tell us it's fun. Trust me, it's fun. You're having fun down there. Like it seems crazy, but just keep working at it and keep like going through the map, and you're the character going through the map and uncovering all you know, the rules of the game and just how to work with the game. And so,
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
if my higher self told me that, I'd be like, all right, switch me spots then.
yeah,
Switch me spots for two
Sweet.
days,
Yeah.
2 days, and show me what it is, and we see how what you're saying is true. You
right.
know, but my higher
Bitch.
self is
Yeah.
me. Yeah, but my
Yeah.
higher self is me. So it's kind of like, yeah, okay, all right.
Higher self says, I did do that. I
I'm
literally do that. That's
I'm
why I'm
literally
your
doing
higher.
it right now. I'm literally it right now. This is it right now.
So funny. Yeah, loving the conversation. And I'm sorry to say I think I only have one more passage left to look at. Either of you have anything to add on this one before we look at one last one? Sounds good. Let's take a look at one passage on doing the best you can. On November 17th, 2018, Quo said, "And thus, if you give your greatest effort to every situation in which you find yourself, you may find yourself rewarded with a blessing that is beyond your wildest dreams, shall we say. For all that you experience is experienced within an ambience of unity, seeing in your reality as separation, yet experienced at the heart of your being as unity. If you will give the greatest effort of your mind, your body, your spirit, and your emotions to process all of the catalysts that you receive in your daily round of activities, you will find a blessing that is the fruit of this effort. The law of responsibility asks that each entity give the fullest respect and effort to each daily experience, to each entity that one meets, and to the entity that you see in the mirror before you each day. You are all the one creator in disguise. Your incarnation has as its purpose the removing of the disguise that you may see the one and all in every instance of your experience." That second paragraph we did actually read already way back at the beginning of this episode, but the paragraph before it I thought was worth looking at. And again, I really appreciate that in spite of everything they've said before, that makes this sound like a really terrible burden to have to bear. They're just saying, do the best you can. That's really how it works. You're not expected to do anything more than the best you can. And I just find that really comforting and inspiring and reassuring. What do you think, Sonia? Any thoughts on anything here?
I think it's definitely worth, like for me, I know for myself rereading that um your incarnation as its purpose to the removing of the disguise that you may see the one in all the instance of your experience. It really helps me to see that because sometimes I really like, I'm veiled. Still a veiled entity, right? And it's like easy to be like, oh, but that sucks over there or whatever. But it's really like just saying, well, that's the creator, and that it's a gift to the creator that we're all experiencing everything we're experiencing. And to give that back to the creator. And it's really all like just expansion and learning. So um, just do your best.
Yeah, I
And play
really
with
love
me.
the phrasing there. It's just your incarnation, you are all the one creator in disguise. Your incarnation has as its purpose the removing of the disguise that you can see the one and all in every instance of your experience. And if you can just see that and treat people like that, treat what appears to be other selves as creator in disguise, just goes back to the golden rule, seeing that all is one, all is self. And yeah, just do the best you can. And
Yeah.
if you fuck up, forgive yourself, say sorry to the people you hurt, and go back, get back in the game. What do you think, Anthony? Anything to add?
A little quick story time with your good old friend Anthony Johnson. Give me no ear wink, Jonathan, if I go too long. And I'm debating whether to share this with him, but my, I guess, higher self is compelling me to tell it. So I'll tell the story. Early 20s, I was with this woman before I was married and anything like that. And before we started dating, she was honest. She had a ex-boyfriend 2 years before I came around that was stalking her. She actually had restraining order against him the whole nine. And I had a recording studio at the time. I'm a nerdy guy, glass and stuff. But one thing you don't do is kind of threaten me or my family. It's just something that I at the time was, even now, I wouldn't tolerate that. And he did that. He pretty much told me that he was going to come after me. And he actually proceeded to do so in a very cowardly way. And for a long period of time, he pretty much telephone harassed me, like called me over 100 times at a recording studio, and I couldn't even answer my calls to do business. And I even purchased a gun because he was threatening me and all kinds of stuff. So we fast forward to near the end of this. He actually ends up getting arrested. Totally different reason from my situation. And this detective that was handling the case called me. We go into court. I'm walking in there. I'm all organized, ready to go. I'm angry, frustrated. This guy's been messing with my girl that I like, and it messed up my business and all that stuff. And I'm walking in there, and I took one look at this individual. Now, mind you, as tough and gangster as he was, when he called me, he had a stutter. So it was already, I felt I would feel anger and sympathy for him at the same time. But then seeing him and knowing, what type of mind state you would have to be in to stalk a woman that had no longer wanted you, and to then, throw yourself out there and make all these empty threats and call my phone, and then to see him in handcuffs and the cops had beaten him up, the judge pretty much gave him more time to get his stuff together. I literally went home that day and I picked up the phone and I called the gentleman. I said, if you agree never to call our phone again, I will never show up to court. I will never have you any problems. I will act like this never happened. And he never called us again. And I bring this example up because I could have took two paths. I could have continued down this path of, resentment and anger towards him. And that would have continued on and could have continued and escalated even further, right? Or I could have took the path that most people probably would think is a weaker or a lesser path, but it was the only path that resolved the issue. It was the only path that actually solved it. And it's just like with Gandhi, and you look at India, like or Martin Luther King too as well. The only way to really to fight violence is through nonviolence. The only way
Yeah.
to affront hatred is through love. Society would teach us and our instincts would tell us differently. However, that is the disciplining of the personality. That is the path that we walk.
Yeah. Yeah. Discipline of the personality is a whole nother podcast episode that we did already. So check it out, viewers. Otherwise, no, thank you so much for sharing that story, Anthony. And all the time I've known you, I don't believe I've heard that story before, but what a great example of going for the more loving, compassionate response rather than the knee-jerk reaction, which would be violence and bellicosity and revenge and everything that seems like we've kind of been programmed to think from day one. So I would say that was magical. That was good magic for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Go ahead, Sonia.
It's a great story. Also, like a great, like, you know, the idea of like fighting fire with fire. And it's like, what, even though some around you would be like, oh no, it's the right thing to do is to, they need to, I mean, you might even get messaging that's opposite. And it's like just knowing that's part of building on your intuition and self-discipline and things. But yeah, that's a great.
Remember, I purchased a gun and I was arguing with him for 6 months over the phone, and it only escalated things. It was only when I chose a path of this complete compassion to this person that threatened me and threatened my wife, and in a state where I had complete control, complete dominance over him, I could have crushed him into his life, into his situation for a long time. I chose a different path, and it resolved it, and I've never ever had to deal with him again. Now, if I would have chose the other path, I imagine when he got out of jail, there would have been more situations with that. And if I would have continued with it, who knows what happened. I had a gun at the time. I got rid of that gun because I realized having a gun actually attracts to you the path of a gun owner. And on the path of a gun owner, there are other gun owners. And so I choose to not walk a path of gun ownership because it comes with those consequences. And I found that we create our own realities. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, maybe the two of you had done a similar thing in previous incarnations, and you were being given another chance to try doing it differently, and maybe you just healed a whole lot of karma, balanced a lot of karma through that. Maybe,
Right.
or quite possibly not. But it's a thought that
No,
came to mind as I was listening to the story.
it sounds like some of my higher stuff would do. The more complex and intricate these love situations are, the more I know it's me. As Ross said, the way you know you're on a spiritual path is through. Uh, Now, I don't want to say polarity. It's starts with the P, Jonathan. You're an old school teacher. Help me out here. When you have two conflicting ideas at once.
Oh, paradox.
Paradox. Yes, that the true sign of spiritual path is the constant paradox.
For sure.
I can do good and I can do good. Like what
For sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah, as they've said, being able to hold two contradictory thoughts in your head at the same time, that's a good attainment. Good seniority vibration, I would say.
good times, good
Anybody else
times.
have anything else to add on this passage before we go ahead and start winding things down? It's been a wonderful discussion. I'm going to be sorry to see it end. But where do we go from here? What are some takeaway lessons that we might have from our conversation today? I have five for your consideration. First of all, If you can remember, just do the best you can to make choices that are in alignment with the path you have chosen, service to others to service to self. That is largely what the law of responsibility is about. And yes, you could also sum it up with great power comes great responsibility, something we're going to see in our pop quiz not too long from now. And third, that catalyst will increase until the lessons are learned. That's kind of the way this video game that is third in density incarnations works. And that the law of responsibility applies to us both as individuals and as a collective to see if we can make choices that are more consistent with our service to others path. And lastly, do the best you can in each present moment. That's really all it comes down to. And if you're doing the best you can, you'll be fine, I would say. What do you think, Anthony? Any takeaway lessons of your own you'd like to add?
Love, love, love. The answer to all your questions are love. And then I would add to that too as well is to meditate. If you haven't had a practice of meditation, if you're studying this material, it's imperative that you are spending twice as much time in meditation as you spend reading. So if you spend 30 minutes reading some Law of One material, spend an hour in meditation. You spend 10 minutes in reading, spend 20 minutes in meditation to allow yourself to get there. It's the only thing that they have ever told us to do. You must meditate. That's the only thing that they have ever told us. Everything else is a suggestion. And so I would encourage us to mind that. Yeah.
And they have told us many, many times, that's for sure. Much appreciate that. Sonia, anything to add?
All of this is great. The only thing I can think to add is just be patient with yourself and everyone else around you.
Amen to that.
Amen to that indeed. Thank you so much. Did want to let our viewers know that if you enjoyed this podcast episode, you may well want to check out the other podcast episodes that we mentioned earlier, as well as one of our first episodes on service to others versus service to self, and on service to others, and on service to self, and on the sinkhole of indifference, why it seems so hard for many entities to break out of that black hole or sinkhole and really achieve a vibration level enough to graduate to the next level. And seniority vibration. It's a great episode on learning how to do all of these things that we talked about that can help you achieve a higher level of vibration. Otherwise, we are ready for our pop quiz. Pop quiz, of course, is something we like to do at the end of our podcast, just to end our otherwise heavy conversations, perhaps on a lighter note, and maybe look for Law of One connections in pop culture. Since today's episode was on the law of responsibility, there really could only be one possible pop quiz, and that's on the Marvel comic book character whose tagline was, "With great power comes great responsibility." I am, of course, referring to who, Anthony and Sonia?
Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, indeed.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I do admit I read a few Spider-Man comic books in my youth, and I have seen just about all the Spider-Man movies as well as the animation ones. Have you, Anthony, have you read any of the comic books, seen any of the movies?
Not comic books, but I watched the movies. And as a kid, I did watch, as a 90s kid, I watched them, a lot. The cartoons used to come on Saturday mornings.
Oh, the original cartoons from the
Oh,
70s?
yeah. No,
Wow.
no, 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 no. In the 80s and the 90s, they had like, Marvel cartoons that used to come on. They had X-Men, they had Spider-Man, they had a few other cartoons that used to come on.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. There
Oh,
was
yeah.
a Spider-Man cartoon in the 70s, I think, that I watched a few of.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I'm talking about that one, but still, yeah.
Sonia, have you read any of the comic books, seen any of the movies or cartoons or whatever?
I've seen the Spider-Man movies. I haven't seen the cartoons, but I was really big on X-Men as a kid and watched all the cartoons and I collected
Nice.
the comic books too. So fun.
Nice. We should have a pop quiz on X-Men sometime. I haven't actually watched any of the movies, so I'm probably why I haven't done it yet. But let's see how much you've learned about Spider-Man. I'll ask you a few questions. Panelists, go ahead, say your answers out loud so viewers can hear you in space-time. And you who are watching this on video, say your answers out loud so we can hear you through time-space. As always, points don't matter. If you had fun, you won. First question. Of the three actors who played live action Spider-Man, Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire, who was the oldest and who was the youngest when they made their first appearance? Panelists, what do you think? Just say your answers out loud and guess
Toby,
if you need
Toby,
to.
I say Toby.
Oldest or youngest?
He's the oldest.
Nice.
Tom
Just
the
my guess.
youngest?
What was that, Sonia?
Tom being the youngest?
Nice. Yeah, between the two of you, I think you got it right. Tobey Maguire was 27 when he played
Oh,
high school student Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield, oh no, I'm sorry. Andrew Garfield was 29. He was older than
oh.
Tobey Maguire. But Tom Holland was the youngest at age 20 when he first played Peter Parker in Captain America Civil War. All great actors. Really enjoyed the movies. I did not actually see, I don't think I've seen any of the Andrew Garfield ones all the way through, but I've seen all the Tobey Maguire ones and all the Tom Holland ones, and they were great. Let's see. How about a second question? Talked about this a little bit. In the live action Spider-Man movies, who told Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility? Was it A, Uncle Ben, B, Aunt May, or Richard Parker, Peter's father? What do you think, panelists?
Uh, mm, May? No, that was Uncle
Yes.
Ben. It was Uncle. No, it was Uncle Ben. It was Uncle Ben because I remember when Peter Parker, he was talking to him about it. He was like giving him some advice, and he was saying to Peter Parker, son, with great responsibility comes great power. So I'm just butchered the quote, but yeah,
It's literally on the screen in front of you.
I know. I literally was not even reading it. I was just trying to do the little acting thing. Yeah, but yeah, but you guys get the point. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Sonia?
I don't know. I'm going with Uncle Ben. I'm guessing.
Nice. The correct answer is all of the above. I believe in the original comic books and in the
What?
Tobey Maguire movie, it was Uncle Ben. But apparently Aunt May, who was played by Marissa Tomei, did actually tell Peter that moments before her death in Spider-Man No Way Home. And apparently there was an extra scene from The Amazing Spider-Man in 2014, which I think was Andrew Garfield, where apparently it was his father, the actor who played his father, actually said it. So it's been said a number of different times. How about another one? Who was the voice actor for Miles Morales in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse? Was it A, Shamik Moore, B, Daniel Kaluuya, C, Michael B. Jordan, or D, Jaden Smith? How well do you know your black male
Oh.
actors? I believe is what this question is
How
asking.
well you know their voices, even more
Wow.
so. How well I feel like I want to say Jaden Smith,
That's
but I'm
what
also torn between Michael B. Jordan too as well. So I don't know.
Nice.
I'm gonna guess Jaden Smith.
Nice.
That's what I would if you had a gun to my head, I'd say Jaden Smith.
Good guess. Jaden Smith, who is the son of actor Will Smith, I believe did actually contribute music on that movie, but he was not acting in it. Michael B. Jordan, of course, played Killmonger in the Black Panther movies, and Daniel Kaluuya was also in the Black Panther movies. But
Mhm.
it was Shamik Moore, interestingly enough,
Oh
who
wow.
did the voice of Miles
Oh,
Morales. I never heard of
I'm,
the dude before this, but
I'm
yeah,
saying,
boy, does great job. Yeah.
I've never seen him in any other movies.
I don't think so either. I have not researched him. I am sure he has had other roles, but this is certainly the one that stands out the most for me. All those guys are great actors. I'm not sure if Jaden Smith has done acting, but Michael B. Jordan, obviously in the movie Sinners, which is up for an Academy Award this year, and Daniel Kaluuya was in Get Out, which was also a great movie. Awesome.
No, Jane has a really good movie with his dad called Earth or something. What's
The
that? Where they go
Pursuit of
back?
Happiness. Oh no, right.
No.
You're talking about the science fiction movie.
Yeah, where they had to like literally be extremely present and not have any emotions in order to not get killed by those aliens. They had
I
a
think you're
ghost, as
right.
they were calling. Yeah, I thought that
I
was very
think you're right.
interesting. Yeah.
And I think as a young boy, he was in The Pursuit of Happiness,
Yes, he was.
which
He was
was,
his
yeah,
son too as well. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, good memory. Check them out, viewers. How about one more? The role of MJ in Spider-Man Homecoming was the film debut for Zendaya, whose name means what? Is it A, give light, B, give love, or C, give thanks?
Hmm.
I would say A.
It's a good guess. Sonia?
I want to say B.
Good guess. The correct answer is C. Give thanks. Zendaya is of mixed ethnicity. Her father, Kazembe Ajumu Coleman, is African American with Nigerian ancestry. Her mother, Claire Stormer, was of German and Scottish ancestry. But her name apparently comes from the language of the Shona people in Zimbabwe, and it is a variant of Tende, which means to give thanks. None of this I knew before I researched it for this pop quiz, so you can be forgiven for not knowing that. But it's cool. She's a great actress, and obviously she's been in a lot of great movies, not just Spider-Man, but in the Dune movies. And I don't know. Do you guys know her from other movies?
Euphoria, the HBO show that's really
Yeah, she played a drug addict and she was really good at it.
really good in that
Oh,
one.
wow. Nice. Nice. Yeah, a really gifted actress and seems to be a really wonderful person as well. So certainly wish her blessings and all she continues to do. Same thing, panelists. Thank you, as always, for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. To all our friends at L&L Research, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. To you who are watching this on video at some point in the near or distant future, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. We are sending you our love light and we are receiving yours. Until next time, in the love and light of the one infinite creator. Adonai. Namaste.
Adne?